everything you've been told about weight is incomplete?
Or what if it's not just about discipline or willpower or trying harder?
And what if the shame some people carry around with their bodies was never meant to be there in the first place?
Today's conversation might challenge what you've heard, but more importantly, it's going to free us.
Because today we're talking about obesity, not as a failure, but as something much more deep. I'm Nadi.
I'm Vida.
And we are here to thrive.
Welcome back to Thrive by the Rising Muse, where we have honest conversations about mental, emotional, and spiritual growth. And we are here believing that healing happens when truth meets compassion.
Yes. What if it's not just about discipline?
Yes, ma'am. Today's episode is incredibly important because we're diving into a topic that carries much weight, pun intended, emotionally, mentally, and physically.
And to help us unpack this, we're joined by someone whose journey and expertise bring both science and humanity into our conversation today.
We are so grateful to have, she's Dr. Michelle Gordon. She's a former general surgeon who spent over a decade in operating rooms before making a powerful shift into lifestyle medicine, focusing on menopause, weight management, and sustainable health.
Her work centers on helping people understand their bodies. Thank you. Not fight against our bodies, and removing shame from the healing process.
Dr. Gordon, welcome to Thrive.
Welcome. We need you.
For having me.
It's such a pleasure. So we just talked about you being a surgeon, had a successful career as that surgeon. Can you walk us through what led you to that transition into lifestyle medicine?
Well, it's primarily obesity medicine now. I do have a lifestyle medicine certification. So I was a general surgeon I had a practice for 15 years, and I was in residency for 5. And as I grew my practice to 4 surgeons, I realized I did not like leading surgeons. I didn't like where hospital politics were going, and I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew I didn't want to be doing that anymore. I was tired of doing the physical labor of surgery, and it just wasn't fulfilling anymore. I don't know how else to explain it. So around the end of 2019, one of the surgeons I had hired to be it was in November of 2019, the man I had hired to be my medical director died by suicide. And it was surprising because he really enjoyed his work, and we had just had a conversation a couple of days before about how fulfilling he found his work. And I started looking at my own life and said, am I headed there, kind of thing. And then COVID hit, and it was much easier to wind everything down. So that's what I did. And then I took a bunch of time off thinking, maybe I can build an internet business. And then we were all stuck inside anyway. So I kind of started this internet business and was trying to coach women through menopause naturally. And it was okay, but it wasn't really what I wanted. It wasn't where I really wanted to go. So I let it go and did a lot of work on myself, looking at what was wrong, what was missing in my life, where I wanted to grow. And about 2 years into saying I was never going to go back into medicine, I looked back at myself and I said, you don't have to be a surgeon, but you still have medicine. And I started looking at what my options were. And I saw this board exam for obesity medicine and signed up for it. And that's how I got to it. I was like, I've always been interested in weight loss and fitness and how to make this work. And with these new drugs that were on the market that I didn't know anything about, I thought, let me take this test. Let me see if I can get this past this board. And I'll tell you, it was hard. I took it in 2023, in October of 2023. And then they took a couple months and told me I passed. And I was like, yay. And so that was really good. And then shortly after that test, I also took the lifestyle medicine exam, which is very different because the obesity medicine board is much more like a real board. It's only doctors can take it. You have to be an MD or a DO. You have to do a certain pathway. You can either do a fellowship in obesity medicine as a resident, or you can do a clinical pathway, which is what I did. And I did like 60, maybe 75 hours of CME, just understanding the philosophy. And then I did a bunch of coursework too. Surgeons don't have to know a lot of medicine. We have to know surgery. I did a lot of coursework to relearn the medicine side of it, which was really interesting, but I found I had a proclivity for it. And so it's been really good for me to see that I can reinvent myself. I can still lean into the knowledge that I have from going into medicine and being licensed. And so then I got licensed, and then I decided that, okay, I could build a telehealth practice, because we were still kind of in the middle, towards the end of COVID. And I got a bunch of state licenses, and I said, well, what's the best way to learn how to do this? And I took a job with a big telehealth platform. It was just over a year and a half I worked for them, and I had over 15,000 patient encounters. And so that got me really good at obesity medicine. And in the meantime, I was studying some longevity stuff, and I was studying about hormones. And so I did all that, and took another job with another telehealth company because one of the best ways to learn how to do something is by, putting your hands on it.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's kind of, on the job training, getting paid
Right.
to learn how to do it really well. And that's kind of how I developed the protocols that I work with now, was through seeing patients and developing my own set of protocols.
And doctor, how did burnout affect you as you were going through this period, especially this period of change?
Yeah. So medicine has changed a lot as the insurance companies have gained these vertical monopolies. They control what we can do. They control who gets what. They control what medicine we can prescribe. And in reality, they're practicing medicine.
Yeah.
Without a license and without liability. I had to sit and think what kind of life I want, what kind of practice do I want? The burnout came from working inside of that system. So while I did not participate with insurance, I still had to fight with insurance to get paid. And when I was doing surgery, I did emergency surgery, acute care general surgery. So by the time patients came to me, they were already, it was too far gone. I couldn't stop what was happening. I could only fix it. And we have a saying in general surgery, we say we heal with steel. And so, but I started looking at that as like, well, how can I help that woman who's come to me with a bad gallbladder? How can I help her beforehand to decrease inflammation so that she doesn't need to have her gallbladder out maybe? And that's kind of what led me to where things are now.
Yeah, because the thing is, you get, the emergency person with the gallbladder, and then just so happens that she went into the ER that's out of network, or you might be out of network. She needed that life-saving surgery, but then you save her life, and now you don't get paid, and she has to pay out of pocket.
Well, that can happen. Yeah. I mean, with the No Surprises Act, it's a lot different now. But when I was doing it, the big thing was the insurance companies would say they would pay, and then they wouldn't. And it's frustrating. That's all I can say. I can't say anything about it.
And, I don't think a lot of people realize how much burnout happens in professionals, especially in the health environment. I actually worked for an insurance company for a long, long time. My background is in mental health, and I was working in their mental health department. And I can tell you how frustrating it is from the inside as well, because obviously I was not at a decision-making level. Sometimes it's like, how can you not cover this or help this person with this and that? Or how, we are a mental health company, and then you don't care for the mental health of your employees. So I understand that when you're in the system, how burnout can affect professionals. So
it's hard. The bigger issue, I think, comes down to the fact that doctors who have spent 10 to 20 years of their lives learning how to do something have now been deemed providers of healthcare. And we aren't taught to be a customer service representative. We're taught to create a relationship with a patient that is, we really do look at that patient-doctor relationship as kind of something sacred. And insurance companies interfere with it, the whole vertical integration of insurance companies. I mean, just look at what CVS Caremark did with their PBM back at the end of last year, and said, okay, Zepbound isn't approved anymore. Now it's Wegovy. And because it was all just some back, lobby kind of backroom deal saying, hey, I want to put more money in my pocket, And so with the private equity coming in and taking over the way medicine is managed in the USA, it's all about profit. And so doctors get 7 minutes with patients. They don't get to develop those intense, deep relationships that we used to. Yeah. And this has fractured the care, which is why I designed my practice the way I did.
I'm glad you did. So back to weight loss. One of the biggest misconceptions that we've seen, especially in our arena, which is faith spaces, is that weight loss is pure willpower. From the medical perspective, what are we missing?
What are we missing? Obesity is a chronic relapsing disease. It has its own disease process. And regardless of how you got there, it's a chronic relapsing disease. And the moralization of weight needs to stop. I can tell you that every person I've ever talked to about wanting to lose weight, or I mean, if you're happy where you are, then be happy. I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
And I have some people coming at me on my comments saying, what about healthy at every size? Sure, until your cholesterol goes up and you get plaques and you have a heart attack or you get hypertension. I mean, that's fine. As long as you're healthy, you can be whatever size you want. But what we know from obesity is that obesity is a disease of inflammation. And when you have excess adipose tissue, that adipose tissue acts as an active endocrine organ that increases inflammatory cytokines. And when those inflammatory cytokines start circulating, then fat oxidation goes down. And when fatty acid oxidation goes down, you get more circulating fatty acids, cholesterol goes up, disease process goes up, hunger hormones go down, the hunger hormones go up, and the satiety hormones go down. And then you get this pathological hunger because you're insulin resistant, you're leptin resistant. There's a lot of things going on all at once. And treating it can take time. Before we had GLP-1 medications, we did treat it. It just took a lot longer, and it was mostly behavior. Lifestyle medicine attacks obesity by saying, let's eat plants only. Right?
Okay.
I don't ascribe to that. I don't want to never have chicken again. Right.
Right.
I don't like tofu that much.
I don't like it at all. So we're good.
I mean, I'll eat it. And sometimes it's good, but the best tofu is like wrapped in Chinese sauces. So I don't think I don't think we need to be extreme.
Right.
We don't need to be extreme. For the people who say, you got to suffer through it because I did, that's not how it works. I mean, we have medicine now that can make the hunger manageable, because at the end of the day, when you try to fight your subconscious, the subconscious will always win. Doesn't matter.
I've been watching my 600-pound life.
Okay.
It's well, you probably know about the show.
I've seen clips of it. I've never watched it.
Well, in their program, the way they manage is through bariatric surgery. And but for me, from the psychological perspective, which is my background, one of the things that I'm noticing in the few seasons that I've been looking at is there is a very direct connection between trauma and obesity. I haven't done studies for correlation.
Yeah, I don't know that there are correlations, but what I can say is 1 in 4 women in the United States have suffered some form of sexual harassment or abuse. And it's probably closer to 1 in 3. Most don't. Most go unreported.
Right.
I've seen reports, and again, this is anecdotal. These are not studies.
Right.
I've seen reports of women who lost a significant amount of weight, hated getting noticed, and gained it all back. All right. I know of women who gained weight after sexual assault because they didn't want to be noticed anymore. It's a chicken and egg question.
Right.
Is it related to trauma? Is it not related to trauma? I mean, we eat to feel good. We eat for comfort. And if the comfort is coming from food after a traumatic event like that you keep reliving in your head, that has to be addressed. Bariatric surgery in and of itself can be a cure for obesity. 65 to 75% of patients who have bariatric surgery get a reset set point to a lower weight. So when you hear everybody regains their weight on bariatric surgery, it's not necessarily true. The issue really comes with rapid weight loss and muscle mass loss, and needing to mitigate that and manage muscle mass and osteoporosis risks within somebody who has malabsorption, which is, we do a lot of vertical sleeves too, but Roux-en-Y is a malabsorptive procedure. A vertical sleeve gastrectomy is a restricted procedure, but they still both come with some nutrient issues, et cetera. So I think it comes down to this, I want to bring it back to trauma. If you don't deal with the psychological aspect of what's going on in your life, it's always going to come, wherever you go, there you are.
Right.
And those things are still going to come up. They're going to come up in different ways until you deal with them.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
they sure will. I am 62. I've had a lot of comeuppance.
But I think when you finally decide that this is going to be it, I'm going to make this decision, I'm going to take this medicine, I'm going to do these workouts, I'm going to eat this way, whatever, you make that final decision that says I'm changing. Then you have to work on the beliefs behind it, because if you do not truly believe in your heart of hearts that you deserve this, that you are this, then you will constantly be sabotaging yourself for the rest of your life. And so one thing I tell my patients as they go from large to small is love yourself at every size. Look in the mirror and start to see, who you are. Make sure you get very comfortable with who you are now and who you're becoming. Because if you don't, then you're just going to think that you're going to go back. Some of this comes from studies on lottery winners. Most people who win the lottery are broke within 5 years.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Because of self-concept. And I think we can port this over to people who really want to lose weight. Because when you look in the mirror after losing weight and you don't recognize yourself and you don't know who you are, it can be very disorienting. And if you don't have a supportive structure around you, this is one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine is community. If you don't have a supportive structure around you, or if you have people in your life who are always saying, let's go get ice cream, then it's time to get a new support structure.
So true. I have a question. So is it fair to say that someone could be doing all the right things and still struggling because of what's going on internally?
Well, that delves into psychology, and I'm not a psychologist. I'll talk about subconscious stuff, and I've studied some of that. I don't think I have the qualifications to answer that question. If we talk about internally in terms of physiology, yes, your physiology is going to push back at you. That's metabolic adaptation, and it's well studied. And it doesn't matter like what study I cite. If I cite a starvation study, then they say I'm talking about too much calorie restriction. If I cite metabolic adaptation because of a small calorie restriction, then that's not good enough. Nothing is good enough for the internet bros.
Tell us about the metabolic adaptation. I think that has to do with what you were saying in one of the videos that I was telling you about how every time you go through a process where you lose weight, then it becomes harder the next time. Am I mixing things that don't go together?
Yeah. No, that's about right. Every time, so to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit, right? The problem is that because of beauty standards in our country, women stay in calorie deficit so long that their metabolism isn't able to recover. A calorie deficit is not something that you need to stay in for the rest of your life. It's something you stay in for a cut, and then you go back to maintenance.
Right.
So it's really frustrating to someone who has opened their eyes, so to say, to where women's beauty standards are coming from. And I think with current politics and what's happening in our government, and the fact that we've only still have 3 million Epstein files that haven't been released, and the people that were involved with that, who were in charge of beauty standards for women. So we start thinking about that. What is that based on? It's based on a 12-year-old, 11-year-old girl. And then we have all these actors going to, these waif-like looks. So there's a lot to unpack in what's happening in society when it comes to women. Everybody wants to comment on someone else's body, on someone else's health, on someone else's this or that. You want to look like a stick? Okay, fine. Just as long as you're healthy, I don't care. I really don't care. But anorexia is not healthy.
No.
Okay. Morbid obesity is not healthy.
Correct.
And so, unless everything's normal, if all your markers are normal and you're not at risk, then, you can be whatever size you want. I'm not judging obesity.
Right.
But the people that come to me are people who have been trying to lose weight since they were 7 or 8 or 9 years old, first put on a diet when they were in kindergarten. So it's a very different kind of thing. But your body will fight back. Your body has a set point, even though set point is a theory. We haven't completely proven it, but it seems to be where it is, because based on the bariatric surgery data, those 65 to 75% of patients who have bariatric surgery do reset their weight set point, and they get set to a lower weight. People who don't have bariatric surgery, it's very hard without consistent diligence. That makes sense.
So definitely because of biological factors, willpower alone is not going to resolve this because, like you said, our biology is fighting against us. From what I understand, is part of the survival mechanism that we are built within, where when we are trying to put calorie deficit or working out more, burning more those calories, the body, instead of saying, oh, we're going to be better, is like, you're starving me and we are in crisis.
Right. Yeah. So the body is going to fight back, and it's going to increase your hunger hormone, ghrelin. Mm-hmm. It's going to decrease non-exercise movements. It's going to, that's all the fidgeting you do. Mm-hmm. So when you're in a caloric deficit, you don't move as much. Mm-hmm. It's like your body just stops moving around. Mm-hmm. You know, you see those people who are like always, nah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be
more tired,
not moving. So there's that. And then your hunger hormone. So your hunger hormone goes up, your satiety hormone goes down. No. Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And so you're just, and then your brain says, I'm starving. And so then it pushes you to eat. And you'll get coaches on the internet who say, just eat more filling foods. The problem is that when you are in resistance, the body is going to crave more calorically dense foods and not be satisfied until that. And that's where food noise comes in.
Which was my next question. Go ahead.
All right. So food noise is a really interesting thing. It's like this OCD kind of chattering thoughts about like, what am I going to eat next? Mm-hmm. Where's the next meal coming from? And it's probably an adaptation from when we were coming up in evolution, and our brains start trying to find the next meal when we're starving. The problem is that in America in particular, we're overfed and undernourished. And I can't tell you how many times I've done labs on patients and found them to be undernourished in something like vitamin D or iron, or, you know, things that B12, things that we normally get from our food that just aren't, because we're eating but we're not absorbing or we're not getting. So what I love about the incretin therapies, GLP-1s, is that for most people, they'll quiet that pathologic hunger. And when those patients when that hunger is quiet, I mean, I've had patients say to me, they took their first shot and said, I had no idea that that's what food noise was, but I just stopped thinking about food all the time. It's amazing. And when you add perimenopause into the mix, so what most people don't understand is that women's hormones are never stable. Men have pretty stable hormones throughout their life. They might lose some testosterone as they age. We can replace it. It's not that hard. And not to say that they don't need estrogen, because they do. I'm not going to argue that. And I've got a video coming up about that. Women's hormones are never stable from puberty to menopause. Okay. And then by menopause, they're gone. Mm-hmm. And women in menopause live that part of their life, that half of their life, less healthy than the first half, because they don't have hormones. And because of that one study, the Women's Health Initiative, where the guy in charge went into it with a confirmation bias that women should not be on hormones. And rather than really looking at the data, decided to go to the press overnight, where about 40% of women who were taking hormones stopped. And it went from 40% of women to 0.4% of women, because he said it caused breast cancer. And it wasn't that, it was the progesterone they used.
Wow.
Women get the short shrift all the time, and it's not always a man. It's always a man, but it's not always. I don't hate men. You know, it's so funny. The guys come into my comments and they say, you know, you're just a man hater. And I'm like, no, but I'm also like not a submissive woman, because that's not what any of it meant. Mm-hmm. Being submissive doesn't mean you put your boot on my neck. This is a faith-based podcast. Being submissive means we're partners in life.
Right.
I help you, you help me. It's not that you tell me what to do and I do it because I'm your slave.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we definitely need to focus more on partnership.
Yes.
And making us doormats, or like slaves.
Yes.
Well, let's remember that women in America, so we can only talk about our experience, but in my personal experience as a girl, I was trained that the boys got to do whatever they wanted and the girls got to serve them. Okay. Yes. And I would never really like that. I always thought that, you know, why should the boys be the only ones to get the trucks? Why should the boys be able to go and play sports? And so I pushed back against it. And I hope this is okay, but I had several years of pretty intense abuse as a child at the hands of my grandfather and maybe other men that I don't remember because my brain is pretty awesome and made me forget it. But what I love about the person that I am is that didn't hold me down. I didn't let it break me. And I stood up from it. And I think that the men who were trying to control me could not understand why I always pushed back from that. I never really, the whole submissive thing never really sat well with me. And when you actually look at the original language, that's not it. Girls raised to women, supposed to serve men, right? Have children, because women are things that children come out of, as if that's a bad thing. Okay. Without women, there's no other people. There's no people, right? We could put up we could populate the whole world and just have slaves of men. It could happen. Would we do it? No, but I'm just saying.
No, of course not.
I know, but I'm just saying. Right?
That wouldn't be right.
It wouldn't be right. But it's not a horrible thought. Okay, let me just go back to my thought. So we're raised this whole time to be a servant.
Yeah.
We live inside of that until we start to see that that's not right. Okay. The scripture says something about a help meet, right? But again, that's an interpretation from a man. And when you go back and you go back and you go back, it all comes back to equals, egalitarian. Even Christ was very equal about women.
One of the things that we mention here a lot is that when Christ resurrected, the first person who he told was women. It was not to the disciples. It was not to a man. It was to the women. No. So sometimes people forget that he valued women.
Definitely.
And women were very well. So we could go back to the history of the Christian church, but they were doing like some serious meditation stuff. So 385 AD was Pope Siricius. I don't know how to say his last name. And then that was in 385 AD. And then the Second Lateran Council in 1139 made celibacy a mandatory prerequisite. Pope Gregory VII took action in 1074 to strictly enforce celibacy.
But that only applies to women the most, at least culturally.
Well, the problem for me is that as if sexual expression is bad, like why would a benevolent God give us something that is so pleasurable and
restrict us,
make it bad?
Yeah.
Okay, moving right along.
Because we took a left turn.
Sometimes you gotta have some
backbone information. You do, and I love it. I love it.
Well, again, remember. So I think I want to go back to the fact that women in menopause find some power. Perimenopause and menopause is a time. In old times, the women were wise and crones and knew things. Okay, but now because of the way beauty is viewed, older women aren't as sexy, right? Because the men in charge like children. How else do you look at it, right? Which is kind of anathema to us, but at the same time, if it were really bad, and if the people in charge thought it was bad, then we wouldn't have the people in charge that we have now.
Yeah.
Okay. And we wouldn't be trying to cover it up with a war. So the point I'm trying to make is that at some point, most of the women that I have worked with and know personally around menopause come into this, I don't give a crap anymore. We do not care club, right?
Right.
And start really putting themselves first. What'd you say?
Yes, ma'am.
We do not care club.
200%.
She induced me into that club.
Yeah. It's really important. So I'm not a fan of women staying in their lane. I'm not a fan of women, because what is the lane? We make the lane. Without us, there is no lane. And we'll leave it there. I'll shut up.
You mentioned something about menopause and premenopause. So after menopause, there's no hormones, as you were saying. So it will be harder for someone to lose weight once they hit menopause, right?
Well, it's perimenopause, actually. With the hormone fluctuations that happen in perimenopause, the body goes nuts. And not only does it go nuts, but fat oxidation decreases by 32%. Cholesterol goes up. heart attack risk goes up. So these are all the things that happen. But not only that, fat gets shifted from the hips and it goes viscerally. So this is why you see your belly getting bigger in the perimenopause transition. Appetite becomes dysregulated, paradoxically causes more hunger. This is why women, when I surveyed women, I have about 17,000 responses from women in perimenopause and menopause. And one of the things that they say is, why do I crave food? Why am I hungry all the time? Sign of estrogen withdrawal.
Okay, well, doctor, I got a question. I had a hysterectomy at 28.
Did they take your ovaries?
No, they did not.
Okay.
I had about 9 fibroid tumors.
Okay.
My last cycle was like 40 days. So my hematocrit might as well have been 0. My doctor's like, how are you walking around?
Yeah.
Because my hematocrit was so low.
You adapted. Yeah.
Yeah. But I had that at 28. I'm 62 now. After everything was over, I'm like, best decision. I had to. I was wearing maternity tops and I wasn't pregnant. So that's how large my stomach was.
Okay.
With those tumors. But no, they did not take my ovaries and I didn't have to take hormones. They did tell me I was going to have a difficult time when I go into menopause because I had the surgery so early.
Well, it shows, I think the data tell us that a woman who's had a hysterectomy goes into menopause about 5 years earlier than a woman who doesn't. So average age of menopause in the US is about 51. So you probably went through menopause in your 40s.
Yes.
Excuse me.
I'm still waiting for going.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that when it comes to hormone therapy, early treatment is looking like the best, but it doesn't mean that you can't have treatment. It means that you need to have a nuanced conversation with a physician who's willing to give you hormones. There's not a whole lot of contraindications to hormones. There's a few, but hormone sensitive cancers being the number one, and plus minus blood clots depending on the patient and what's happened. But I would, it's worth a conversation with a prescriber. It's never too late. And the thing is you're at risk for osteoporosis when your ovaries fail, and you're at risk for cardiovascular events. And after 10 years after menopause, if you start hormones, then you're not going to get the cardiovascular benefits, but you might get the bone health benefits with time and sexual health benefits. I think it's very important we talk about the sexual side of menopause, because if men's penises shriveled and fell off, there would be a vaccine. Women's vaginas actually atrophy with loss of estrogen. Okay, they shrivel up. The labia minora disappear, the clitoris gets smaller, and we can treat that. We can treat that with localized estrogen and localized DHEA. Women who have lost their hormones tend to have more urinary tract infections, and that can lead to sepsis and death. And so one of the things, especially if you have aging mothers, make sure that they get vaginal hormones, and that can mitigate and make their lives much better. If you're having intercourse and it hurts, it's feeling like knives, you don't have to put up with that. You can get treatment.
No, you just rang a bell for me, because my mom had a hysterectomy when I was 8. She had me at 40. And I know, and she was diabetic. And for the latter part of her life, she had constant UTIs that sent her to the hospital. And I was the keeper of her medication, and I know she didn't have any hormones in there.
Right. So, yeah. So that's the probably one of the biggest takeaways for today is that vaginal hormones can prolong the life of an aging woman or any woman. Super important.
We've learned. I know we were going to learn a lot today.
There's a couple people to follow on Instagram. I think the number one champion of this is Rachel Rubin. Rachel Rubin she was just on the Mel Robbins podcast, but she is a huge champion of hormones, vaginal hormones for women. And then we have Kelly Casperson, who's always talking about testosterone.
Okay. As we're talking about hormones and medicine, let's talk about the usual elephant in the room, GLP medication.
So glucagon-like peptide 1, which is a naturally occurring incretin in our bodies, lasts about 2 minutes. A woman discovered it, and a woman learned how to stabilize it. And the woman who learned how to stabilize it, Lati Knudsen, works for Novo, and she figured out how to package it in a way that it lasts for a week. So we do a 1 weekly injection. First we've been prescribing GLP-1s for about 20 years. Injectable is a little bit less than that. First one on the market that was really successful was called Saxenda or liraglutide. Liraglutide is a daily injection, so it causes needle fatigue. Pretty good weight loss, about 15%, but high side effects. I find the same thing with semaglutide, which is with Wegovy, Ozempic. Higher side effect profile, especially for women, but good weight loss, 15%, some 20, and up to 20% now with the newest dose of 7.2 milligrams. And then Eli Lilly put together GLP-1 plus insulinotropic peptide, and that's tirzepatide, Zepbound, and Mounjaro. And remember, these drugs were initially for diabetes. They were to manage blood sugar and bring down hemoglobin A1C in type 2 diabetics. And then they found this appetite suppression and used it. And for the audience, if somebody asks, we see this a lot, is it cheating? Is it cheating because you're supposed to lose weight on your own? Because I did, and I fought myself through it. Is it cheating to use Viagra, men? And the reason I say that is because Viagra was created as a treatment for angina, and they found that it had this side effect of causing, treating erectile dysfunction. So women find a drug because it's mostly women. I mean, there are some men. I'm not going to say obesity doesn't affect men. It does. I find that men tolerate semaglutide better than women do. Women tend to do better with tirzepatide, and tirzepatide has more weight loss. The insulinotropic peptide, polypeptide inside of tirzepatide tends to mitigate the side effects, even though there's still side effects. And you always get side effects as you titrate up. I like to titrate slowly and get as much weight loss out of each dose. It's not a race to the top. It's a race to effectiveness, whichever drug we're using.
Is it the fact that the way our bodies are built, we are kind of built to hold on more to fat because of pregnancy and our hormones, that it's easier for men to work better into a GLP-1 than the GLP-2?
There's no such thing as a GLP-2.
Well, tirzepatide.
No. Tirzepatide's not a GLP-1 too. It's a GLP-1 plus an insulinotropic polypeptide. Gotcha. There's no such thing as a GLP-3. Retatrutide is GLP-1 plus insulinotropic polypeptide plus glucagon.
Gotcha.
Okay. So the GLP drugs, the incretin drugs, they work in a lot of places. They work on your gut, they work on your brain, they work on the dopamine pathway, they work on the reward centers. So there's a lot of things that they do. Women are not small men. Women have their own hormonal profile. And in perimenopause in particular, we can be more prone to insulin resistance and then fat accumulation, because as estrogen levels decline and FSH increases, there's the body doesn't respond as well to insulin. And so then there's more circulating glucose. The pancreas puts out more insulin. The glucose stays outside, doesn't get driven back into the cells. The pancreas tries to put more out. The glucose stays, and then you end up with diabetes. I mean, but part of that is fatty acids. I don't want to get out of the whole picture, but yeah.
Right. One of the things that I've been seeing is GLP-1s are also being looked at for other medical conditions like
sleep apnea.
Sleep apnea is being...
Yeah, so the reason why it's prescribed for sleep apnea is because weight loss will directly affect that. So you need to have, in order to get Zepbound for sleep apnea, you need to have severe sleep apnea and obesity, and that can mitigate it. But with Alzheimer's, which we are often characterized as type 3 diabetes.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
We do want to try to prevent that, and prolonged insulin resistance over all metabolic dysfunction can increase long-term dementia risk. GLP-1 can help reduce that risk in patients with diabetes, but the phase 3 EVOKE trials did not meet endpoints in established Alzheimer's. So maybe we can do some prevention, but we're not going to be able to treat once it's there. Research is ongoing with that.
Part of the narrative behind the GLP-1s is cheating is the fact that they have to be taken long term, and that once you stop taking them, some people regain the weight.
Most people.
So what
if you stop taking your antihypertensive, what's going to happen? If you stop taking your asthma medication, what's going to happen? Would you ever try to shame somebody out of their asthma medicine? If you stop taking your insulin medication, your diabetes medication, what's going to happen? Obesity is a chronic disease. We have medicine to treat it. If you stop taking the medicine, the data show us that most people regain 2/3 of the weight they lost in a year.
Yeah.
And all of the cardiovascular benefits. So the SELECT trial, let me bring that one up because I've got some information on it. So what's really interesting about the cardiovascular outcomes that happened with semaglutide in particular is that it is cardioprotective regardless of weight loss. If you're one of the 20% that loses less than 5% of your weight on these medications, even those people benefit. And when you stop it, you don't get the cardioprotective benefits. So these drugs are really revolutionary in terms of longevity, in terms of health, in terms of inflammation. The C-reactive protein decreases, and this is a marker for overall inflammation. The GLP-1s as an inflammatory disease mitigator is really exciting. Hypertension is an inflammatory disease. Obesity is an inflammatory disease. Cardiovascular disease is inflammatory. And when we can mitigate the inflammation in the body, that's really important. Well, let's talk a minute about what happens with postmenopausal women and cardiovascular disease, because menopause with loss of estrogen, there's a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. GLP-1 medications were going to be first-line therapy based on this data. And in the study where they enrolled menopausal women, the SELECT trial, they had a 20% lower major cardiac adverse event. So we call those MACEs, major adverse cardiac event. 20% reduction is significant. That means that if you're on a GLP-1, specifically this was semaglutide, not tirzepatide, but tirzepatide is GLP-1 plus and something else. Right. So I'm going to assume that ports over, but we don't have the data. The trial only enrolled patients with pre-existing cardiovascular disease, and the cardiovascular benefits are independent of weight loss. So if you're a postmenopausal woman, being on a GLP-1 is probably cardioprotective.
That's good. I know one of the biggest issues for people who actually want to try these medications, aside from insurance, well, it's part of insurance coverage and the pricing. Do you see them coming down to a way that normal people will be able to get them?
Yeah, I mean, already in Asia, the patent on semaglutide has expired, and there are people getting monthly amounts for $15.
Wow. Yeah, I think in the US it's until
2030
or something like that.
No, I think it's 2030 for semaglutide.
Okay.
Yeah. That doesn't mean, I don't know. I mean, listen, I think there's a place for compounding.
Yeah.
As long as it's a reputable compounding pharmacy. I think that it's fascinating to me that Eli Lilly came out and said that, mixing it with B vitamins is causing some sort of impurities, but they didn't tell us what they were. Right. But it was perfectly fine when there wasn't enough. When there wasn't enough, it was perfectly fine. So I think there's a lot of corporations going after their profit. I can't say no to that.
Yeah, my conspiracy theory is that once, I can't say that word,
retatrutide.
Thank you.
Retatrutide
comes out, the other two will go down, because
they should.
Because from what I saw, when Ozempic was the first one, it was probably not the first one, but the one that went mainstream was Ozempic, and then once Zepbound came out, now Ozempic is less expensive. So I'm guessing that once this new one comes, I think it's going to be next year.
It's hard to say. They're still enrolling for phase 3. Phase 2 trials are really promising in retatrutide. It's showing bariatric surgery level of weight loss.
Okay.
With some muscle preservation, because what happens when you add glucagon to the mix, glucagon increases fatty acid oxidation, and it's super, super exciting. The problem I have with retatrutide is that people are using experimental, because you could see on Reddit that people are using it, but they're using it at research grade only. And we don't know what's in that.
Right.
And I'm not going to be an experiment, just like I won't use any untested FDA approved polypeptides. I just won't. I won't prescribe them, and I won't use them because we don't know. We just don't know.
One of the things that you talked about was needing support. How important it is for people to have support when they're trying to meet their goals.
I think that's important in anything. The issue is there's a guy on the internet who teaches marketing. His name is Alex Hormozy. You may have heard of him. He's a pretty big guy. He's got millions and millions of followers. He wrote a book called $100 Million Offers, then $100 Million Leads. He's a marketing guy. But he tells a story of when he started in his gym and he was sleeping on the floor and people were rooting for him. And when he started getting successful, making money, they started calling him boss man People will root for you as long as you are below them. There is a point of self-concept where you have to realize that you're enough by yourself. Now, support is important and you need people around you that you can trust, but people invariably are, and I'm not jaded, but people betray you. You cannot put all your trust in everyone else, in someone else. You know, how many of us have gone to a church and been sexually molested? Mm-hmm. How many of us have told someone our secret only to have someone else tell it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have to become comfortable enough with who we are mm-hmm. to say, I deserve this, and I don't give a shit what anyone says.
What would you tell someone who is trying to get to that point of making the decision to go to their doctor and ask for medication or for help to start their journey?
Well, I'll just tell you my story, because I take tirzepatide and I've been taking it since December of 2024. Had been on a weight loss journey ever since my son was born in 1993, up and down, up and down, up and down. I could never lose the weight. And I would lose it, then life would happen, kind of thing. It's the same story. This time it's going to work, right? I went to the premier medical meeting for the Obesity Society called Obesity Week. And one of the presenters there said this about tirzepatide. It prevents 10 types of obesity-related cancers. It prevents diabetes. It seems to have some brain health benefits, cardiovascular benefits. And that was what turned, because I was working with a coach. I was lifting weights. I was doing all the things. And I said, I'm going to take this medicine and see what happens. And I started, I was really so afraid that I started it instead of starting at 2.5, I started at 1. And I stayed at 5 milligrams for the longest time. And then I wanted to lose more weight and I went up and I didn't find that it was any better. So I went back down. But the point I'm trying to make is that you have to make the decision to take the risk. There's a lot of people saying, well, we don't know long-term side effects. We've been prescribing these drugs for 20 years. And every time we studied them, they seem to have a synergistic effect with whatever. I haven't seen anything negative yet, except for things like nausea and constipation and GI side effects. The main thing you have to avoid is you can't have a history of, you can't be pregnant, you can't be breastfeeding. Do not take these and if you want to get pregnant, you stay off of it for 2 months. You can't have a history of medullary thyroid cancer or multiple endocrine neoplasia type 2. That's a genetic problem. And in the mouse or rodent studies, they showed that it increased that particular strain of thyroid cancer. We don't know about humans because we didn't test it on humans. We're afraid, right? Right. So those are really the only contraindications. And then you have to use caution in patients who've had pancreatitis. Those patients need to be in person and really be monitored closely. And we need to use caution with anyone who's had gastroparesis. But it's still not an absolute contraindication. So we have to be careful with dosing and that sort of thing. So I find that what I love about using vials is that we can personalize the dose. We don't have to follow standard dosing.
Love it. Love it. And it all comes down to it's our responsibility for ourselves. We got to love ourselves enough to want to get healthy instead of, people pressuring you to lose weight. Mm-hmm. I look at myself in the mirror every day. I know what I look like, and nobody's got to tell me that I need to do something to get healthier or to get smaller. These are choices that we take, and it's choosing to take care of ourselves. That's why I have on my t-shirt today.
What's it say?
It's about self-care for me.
Okay? Yeah, that's great.
Self-care.
Well, I mean, you're important enough to take care of yourself.
One of the things we talk a lot about here is because one of the things I had to learn in my own journey was that self-care is not selfish. Because one of the things, as you were talking about in terms of indoctrination and how we're raised, is that you're supposed to take care of everybody. And you go at the end, whatever's left, if there's anything left. And I don't believe in that anymore, because I have learned that I can't take care of anybody if I'm not okay.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's really funny to me when I see the men come into my comments and say that their expectation of me was that I wouldn't use the word mansplaining, and that I lost the respect, or that blah 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 blah. I know this, and I write back, well, do you need a tissue to wipe your eyes? Because it's anytime a woman shows power, they get taken down.
I actually saw a comment and I was giggling at your response, because there was a comment that a guy put on one of your videos saying, why don't you have a man explain this to you?
Yeah. I wrote a whole video for that.
And then what she did was she pulled out all the outcomes, medical outcomes between male doctors and female doctors. That was like I was telling you, a bomb drop.
Cheers to you, doctor.
Yeah. No, and it turns out that guy, like, I think his account got banned, but he even said to me that he does it just to stir the stuff, just to stir it up. And he wrote back to me and says, "Oh my God, I got a response video. I'm so excited." So
it was a troll.
You know, so he was, but it was such a triggering thing for me because I came up in a world of men as a surgeon. I came, you know, I've always pushed against these male norms. And so am I a man hater? I'm not going to call myself a misandrist. I'm not a misandrist, but I have very little tolerance for the privilege men seem to think they have. I don't owe you an explanation about anything. I don't have to cite my sources at the end. I do, but I don't have to. And, you know, you get these gym bros coming at me saying, "Oh, I can see that you're reading." I'm like, "Yeah, so what? I use a teleprompter. I don't memorize well. Who gives a crap?" Right? So I use a teleprompter. I bring receipts. And then they say, "Well, you know, if you really knew it, you would just be able to spout it off the top of your head." There, you just can't win. You just can't win with men.
Yeah. And the thing is,
so that's and they think that we owe them something.
Right. That's what
and those men I dismiss. I had a guy call me nasty, and then I restricted him so he couldn't leave comments. And he sent me a DM saying, "You know, we can't have a good conversation." And I'm thinking, I didn't even respond to him because I'm thinking, you called me nasty. I expect better decorum for a doctor. I don't care what you expect. I'm going to be who I am. It has nothing to do with you.
Right.
I like her.
I told you would. This has been absolutely awesome. I'm going to tell you it was better than my expectations. So
that's amazing.
Love this conversation.
Yes.
And you're welcome here anytime.
You got some other things.
Well, I'm not for everyone. I'm sure I pissed a lot of people off with my philosophy. That's fine.
It's okay.
You can come at me in my, but you know, I'm really, it's funny. I do control the narrative because I'm not going to let people abuse me. Yeah. And I just delete those comments. I'm tired of it, but I can, you see, that's the thing. I don't have to listen to that. I can say, you know what? This is my page. You want to go rant about me? Go rant on your own page. I don't care. Yeah. Bring me more audience.
There you go. Again, thank you so much for your honesty, your candid responses. Like I told you, that's who we are. We like.
Yeah, I love it. So let me just leave your audience with this. If you're thinking about starting a GLP-1 and you're afraid to go talk to your doctor, if your doctor tells you to eat less and move more, get a new doctor.
Yes.
Okay, that's medical gaslighting.
Yes.
If you're afraid to start a GLP-1, follow my page because I'm going to explain the physiology behind obesity and why these meds work. If you think GLP-1 is cheating, you're wrong. Obesity is recognized as a disease by every major medical organization, and your opinion doesn't matter.
If people want to find you, where can they do that?
So you can find me at Instagram at Dr. Michelle Gordon, spell out the word doctor. And my name is with 2 L's, Michelle. You can find me on Facebook at Dr. Michelle Gordon with a DR, LinkedIn the same. I'm on YouTube at dr.gordon.do, and on my website, gordon.me. You can join my email list. I send out a couple of emails every week just talking about physiology. And I've got a really excellent physiology course on my website called The Predictable Pattern Behind Midlife Weight Gain that you can get for $99. And it's about an hour long. It comes with you get all this, you can get all the slides and a workbook, all of the physiology behind why women gain weight in midlife. So you can understand it and then go back to your doctor and say, this is what's happening.
One last thing, doctor. I remember back in the 90s, I went to this doctor, started taking Fen-Phen.
Oh, Lord. Back.
And it is.
Yes.
And then I'm watching the news one day and they're talking about women's hearts blowing up and stuff. And I'm
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, one side of that is still available commercially.
Okay.
It's a controlled substance that's called phentermine, but it did cause some valvular heart disease. And it's just that, we're breaking our hearts to lose weight.
Literally.
Yeah. And that shows how strong the cultural pull is. But we have medicine now that really works. We have GLP-1s work better than any pill. And we have some GLP-1 pills now too that have just come out that seem to work really well. Just if you're going to go with a pill, you really need to go with oral Wegovy. if you want to do it for weight loss, because that's the only one that's been FDA approved and is wrapped in the right kind of coating that it's not just not destroyed by your GI tract. There's a couple of really promising drugs that are on the market that are in phase 3, I think, or orforglipron and what's the other one? Let me look it up. Danuglipron, I think. Yeah, danuglipron. So orforglipron and danuglipron are really exciting, although orforglipron is probably the most promising of the two because it doesn't require any restrictions around when you eat. They're super cool because they're small molecules that resist enzymatic degradation. They're not peptides. They just kind of go through. So there's a lot of really, really exciting. There's a lot of really exciting research now because of the discovery of GLP-1.
When we get new things, we might bring you back so that you can explain to us.
I'm happy to come back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, doctor. You have been great.
Thanks for having me.
Freeing and true. Thank you.
Always true.
Yes.
All right. You guys have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
If this episode spoke to you like it spoke to us, share it with someone who needs to hear it.
And remember, your journey to health is not about shame. It's about understanding.
Yes. And giving yourself permission to heal.
I need to remind you to follow us on social media so that you can get episodes and information like this. Follow us at The Rising News on all platforms. And we are trying to get to 1,000 followers. You can make that happen.
Remember, if you're experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988. If someone you love is experiencing a mental health crisis, dial 911 or take them to the nearest emergency room.
If you think you are in a domestic violence relationship or need to talk to someone or need some assistance, please dial 800-799-7233 or text 887-888. Make sure that you're in a safe place when you're making this outreach. Until next time,
don't forget to thrive.
Have a blessed day.
Bye-bye.